I'm delighted to be here and welcome to all of you. And for those of you who were here last week, welcome back. And I'm here, as Kendra said, to talk about the hidden curriculum of keeping a job. But first, what I want to do is just briefly talk about the state of employment and autistic people. What we know at this point in time is that less than 16% have full-time paid work, and about the same number have part-time employment. It's a tragedy that less than 1/3 have any type of paid employment. Now, 50% report being underemployed, meaning that they have a job that does not match their skill level, with their skill level being much higher, which is a chronic problem for our folks on the spectrum. And 80% live with their family members throughout their lifetime, not as their first choice. So what this means is that we have tremendous potential for individuals with autism, but they are not fulfilling that potential. And as I discussed last week, we do have to question, what do we teach? Because in school systems, we are charged primarily with teaching academics. And in fact, if you look at the social realm, there are social competencies nationally only for young children, not for our school age children or young adults. And so we have to really be aware of what it is we are teaching. We can't teach specific job skills because the top 10 in-demand jobs right now did not exist in 2004. And I was just looking at an article written in 2021, and they listed 15 jobs that did not exist in 2015. And so we cannot teach job-related skills. What we need to do in schools is to teach our kids how to be good employees, how to understand the employment environment, and how to act accordingly. And part of this is known as, we talked about last week, the hidden curriculum. Now, the hidden curriculum is the set of information that everyone who is neurotypical knows. But those who have autism do not know this information. Pardon me. It is assumed or expected knowledge, knowledge that dropped from the air, that hit neurotypical people but missed autistic people. And despite not being directly taught, it is extremely important. And I would say increases in importance as you approach adulthood. Here is a brief video clip of a social situation. This was filmed by the National Autistic Society in the UK. Watch this video and see if you can determine what unwritten rule or set of rules this individual did not know, and whether or not it is important.
Hey, Daniel, you want to take a seat?
Don't worry about it. He was an idiot anyway.
Plenty of fish in the sea.
I understand it. Just don't understand it.
Nothing to understand. Just playing games. Just wants you running around after him.
I mean, if there's something wrong with me,
Just count it as his loss.
but why would he say he loved me and why would he dump me?
Because he's a man.
But why? Why has another one dumped me?
Maybe he thought you were ugly.
Now, the prevalence now is much higher, as you know. Um, what was the unwritten rule? Well, in this social situation, this woman was upset because her boyfriend apparently dumped her. The unwritten rule is in this situation, we generally do not offer suggestions on why the individual was dumped, but rather we listen, we sympathize, we tell the other person how wonderful they are. Now, is this important on the job? I would say, yes, it is. A portion of quality of life on the job is working with other people. Also, a portion of doing your job well includes collaborating with people. In this situation, if this man was not able to correct his statement, could it possibly result in him not having close collegial relationship? Also, could it negatively impact a project that they are working on jointly? The answer is yes. Who needs to know the hidden curriculum? Well, in my opinion, everyone needs to understand the unwritten rules. And everyone needs to understand something else, that when a hidden curriculum error occurs, it is simply that it is an error. It is a mistake. And how do you detect these mistakes? Well, quite often, hidden curriculum errors, especially those on the job, are identified when a hidden curriculum mistake is made. When you or I, as an employee, may be standing back for a nanosecond thinking, I assume that everyone knew that. Or everyone knows that. I never thought I would have to teach or tell someone. It's obvious that, or he did that on purpose. We need to understand that, as I talked about last week, the autistic neurology is different than the neurotypical neurology. And autistic people need to be taught information that others implicitly learn. Here's an example. Fred went on a couple of picnics in his life. And the picnics that he went on usually involved a picnic basket or something similar, a blanket to sit on the ground, maybe some picnic benches. And usually there was some sort of game that would be played after he and his family had eaten. Well, Fred gets a job and he receives an email about the company picnic. And Fred automatically feels happy because he knows exactly what picnic behavior is. He knows that, he'll bring a picnic basket, a blanket. He's going to wear his grubby clothes because there's going to be playing of games. And it's going to be a fun time for all. So he RSVPs, yes, and he shows up on the day of the picnic with his basket ready to go with games. And this was this company's idea of a picnic. And of course, Fred walks in and sees this, and how comfortable is he? Absolutely not. At minimum, he's anxious. Maximum, he has a meltdown. The hidden curriculum item here is a picnic can mean many different things. When you are invited to a picnic, it is a good thing to ask what the picnic is going to be like, what you should bring, what dress should be. Now, is that important? It absolutely is. It's important for Fred as an employee to be able to walk into this environment and feel comfortable. But it's also important for other people to see Fred being competent in his environment. But when we're looking at employment factors for autistic people, we want to look at what sort of factors lead to successful employment. And these factors are consistent with the autistic neurology. First, and by first, I don't mean most important, but first, a consistent schedule and job responsibilities. Autistic people thrive on predictability. So, if the individual knows the schedule and knows exactly what he is supposed to do across the day, he is more likely to be calm and focused. Second, a mentor. Having someone on the job who likes the autistic employee, who enjoys spending time, who will simply keep an eye out on the individual to make sure that they are, staying on target, that they are not anxious, that they don't feel a little bit of loss. Someone who can do just a little check-in, and that check-in may be, hey, how are you doing today? What are you doing next? What's the schedule say, that you're supposed to be doing right now? The next, predictable social demands. Here we have that word predictable again. But the individual not only needs to know what the job task is, but he needs to understand what he's supposed to do from a social aspect. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. A system to keep track of work progress. A way to know if the individual is producing the quantity and quality of what is expected. And predictable routines for lunch, breaks, and other unstructured time. Again, making sure that the individual knows exactly what he does throughout the day. Another factor that leads to successful employment, we don't often think about this, but if work starts at 8 a.m., we don't walk in at 8 a.m. We need time before the day begins so that we can get organized. Another factor for successful employment is the opportunity to directly communicate with someone that the individual trusts and knows will give them correct information, can clarify information, and can verify. This, in many ways, can be the supervisor and or the mentor. The next thing we know is another factor that leads to success are our reminders and assurances. Okay, a simple reminder in case the individual forgets, something we all appreciate, but assurances are very important. Many of our times, our individual who has autism will be engaging in a task, but will not know whether he is doing the right thing and will feel a degree of anxiety. So simply letting the individual know on an ongoing basis, hey, you're doing a good job, or I like the way that you, or the customer will really appreciate how you did X. And next, a method to make sure that everybody knows what the individual needs regarding supports. So if the individual needs a script in order to talk to employees, everyone who will be interacting with him should know that a script is needed. Mainly so that if that script is lost, it can be easily replaced. Now, we also want to have the individual bring intentionality to the workplace, to have a plan to know what he or she is supposed to do. And then finally, we want to make sure that we have established routines. Now, autistic people, and in fact, I think all people thrive on routines. And the more we have a set of routines in place, the less cognitive drain there will be on the autistic individual. So if the individual has a routine to get ready in the morning before he comes to work, if he has a routine on how he travels to work, and if he has a routine of what he does after work, he is more likely to be settled less anxious, more productive, and happy. So, for hidden curriculum items for arriving at work, one, employees must arrive at work ready to work, checking in early, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15, maybe 30 minutes for some employees. And this will allow them to get settled, hanging up their jacket, putting their lunch in the fridge, using the toilet, maybe socializing with coworkers a little bit, so that and looking over the daily schedule, so that when 8 o'clock happens, the individual has brought intentionality to work. He can start working. When we say work starts at 8, we are, whether we think about it or not, telling the individual to arrive at 8. We need to talk about arrival time and work starting time. Also, we need to work with the individual to help identify what activities that are social in nature are compatible with work. For example, I know several autistic employees who choose not to socialize Monday through Thursday night, or excuse me, Sunday through Thursday night, because they feel like they need enough sleep and to be regulated, and their after work activities are focused on keeping themselves calm and focused. Socializing, they some of the employees will say, I'll do on my days off. The trick is to know how much downtime the individual needs in order to be successful at work. I have a friend with autism that she has been able to figure out that for every 3 days she works, she needs 1 day of downtime in order to stay regulated. And if she doesn't have that day of downtime, her next days of work are negatively impacted. Now, the next thing we must help our individual understand is the company culture. Every company has a culture. For example, is the culture that you call supervisors by their first name, by their last name, or do you call them Mr., Ms., Mrs.? Is it a culture where you take breaks at designated times that are pre-scheduled? Or is it that you just tell your supervisor you'd like to take a break and the break is granted? Is it the type of culture that everyone waits until the boss leaves before they leave? Is it the type of culture where you're expected to work overtime? We have to, and culture is unwritten. For example, acceptable coffee break times. Well, it may be that the owner's daughter spends 2.5 hours at coffee break, whereas our autistic person who is an office staff maybe has 25 minutes worth of break for the entire day. If that is the culture, then our autistic person needs to understand that culture, because the last thing that we want is our autistic employee reminding the owner's daughter that 25 minutes of break are allowed per day. Also, we need to help make the organizational chart apparent. Quite often, it is unclear who a direct supervisor is. Who do you report to if you have a problem? I know many autistic people and non-autistic people who have accidentally gone above their supervisor to seek help, not realizing that they needed to go through someone else first. Here is an organizational chart that shows which people have secretaries, which do not. And here you'll see that Watkins, Joe, and Bill all have administrative help, but Roe and Morna do not. And it is not appropriate for Morna to use Joe's administrative assistant. And so the structure of the company needs to be understood. In the realm of the hidden curriculum, you have to understand that your supervisor is your boss. And the supervisor, sometimes like a teacher, will ask you to do something. The hidden curriculum rule here is when a supervisor asks you to do something, it is a demand, it is not a request. Also, our autistic employees need to understand that they do not have to like their supervisor. There is no rule that says that they do, but they do have to be pleasant, responsive, and respectful. And if they have unkind thoughts about their supervisor, those need not be voiced aloud. Also, hidden curriculum item, do not correct your boss. I know a man on the spectrum who was fired. His boss had called together his entire team. They worked on a project together. The boss began to outline a new aspect of the project. Our employee, about 2 minutes into the discussion of the new concept, stopped the conversation and told the supervisor that he did not know what he was talking about. He, of course, lost his job, the autistic employee. Now, chances are everybody else in the meeting knew that the information that was being shared wasn't the most accurate, but they knew not to correct the boss publicly. And similarly, when asked for suggestions, only give one or two. If, as an autistic employee or any employee, if you are asked for a suggestion, if you have 20, pick out your best one or best two. Do not overwhelm the entire group with more. As an employee, it is important to know what is in the handbook. However, you need to understand also that the handbook has information, but there are rules that go beyond the handbook. For example, I know a young woman who had a lovely job, and this company was very strict about no phone calls on company time, and it said that in the manual. And it was talked about fairly extensively. And this woman, who was just absolutely a wonderful person, did very well on her job, thought, well, I won't call my boyfriend, but I am going to text him because that does not break the rules. Well, it did break the rules. What the rule really meant was, do not be in contact with people outside the workplace during the work day if it's not work related. But she took the information very literally and thought it only had to do with phone calls. So if you are working with an autistic person and you see something like this occur, please realize that it is a misinterpretation or an error, and direct instruction is needed to correct the situation. And so these hidden curriculum items can be important. The hidden curriculum does not include does not include every piece of information that you need to know about the company. It will outline general information. It will not tell you everything. I know a situation where a woman was working as an accountant during tax season, and this company was very concerned about employee theft of supplies. And so in the manual and talked about in meetings, do not take home office supplies. Well, this woman was working lots of hours during counting the season, as you can imagine, did not have time to get to the store, ran out of toilet paper and saw some toilet paper at work, thought it's not an office supply and this will save me time so I can work more. And she lost her job. Ask a mentor about the most important rules of the company, or if the rules in the handbook can be expanded upon with examples. And it is a good idea to realize that anything that takes you away from your job, whether it's a text or checking your Facebook page or making a phone call or sending an email, those things probably should be done before or after work, and check to see what the policy is. And as in the example that I shared with you just a little bit ago, don't take any items for personal use from work, because technically this is considered theft. If you need paper clips, if you need toilet paper, if you need pens, it is best that you buy them yourself instead of taking them from your workplace. Now, I mentioned a mentor is needed. And this came from I've modified this handout, and it came from a list on how to care for or support an introvert. And to me, it matched perfectly with autism. And so I just changed the title to How to Mentor an Individual with Autism. The citation is below. But these 12, first, respect the need for privacy. Okay, we all need our privacy, and we don't want to be too intrusive with the autistic person. We want to respect how much they love to talk, and how much they like to interact. We also, if they share information, want to respect that we do not share that information with other people unless we have permission of that individual. Two, as a mentor, you may be redirecting or providing new information to that individual, but never ever embarrass a person, privately or in public. And if you are sharing information that the individual doesn't know, try to do it privately in case the individual is embarrassed. Whenever possible, provide an opportunity for the individual to observe you in the environment, because sometimes it is easier to see someone engage in a behavior and have that behavior explained afterward than just to use words. So please consider letting the individual with autism observe you as the mentor. Also, we know processing time is sometimes different for a lot of people. And so when you are talking to an autistic person and you want a response, provide thinking time. You may provide thinking time, 10 to 15 seconds, or you may decide to provide even more thinking time to say, here's the information. Let's talk about it at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Provide that time for the individual to process will make sure that their anxiety stays low, and therefore their productivity and their ability to share information will be high. Next, don't interrupt. Some of our students may not be fluent speakers, needing a little time to get their words out. Be patient, be quiet, let the individual talk. I'm sure you've all had those times, and I think you've probably been noticed a couple times on this webinar that I've experienced, where you need just a couple of seconds to get the words out. So let the individual talk. Prepare for changes. I mentioned predictability earlier. Let the individual know what is going to be occurring, especially around changes. If an individual knows what the schedule is and any changes that are likely to occur, the individual is more likely to be comfortable in the environment. Also, 15-minute warning before stopping. Most of us, when it's time to end a task, maybe to go into a meeting or to begin another task, like a warning, because that warning will give us time to wrap up the task, then to kind of change our mindset so that we can begin to think about and do the new task. So, whenever possible, if you're mentoring an autistic individual and you're having to redirect to a new task, try to give a 15-minute warning. Again, similar to not embarrassing in public, if you need to redirect or going with skill number 9 or teach new skills, do it as privately as possible or teach a group of people the same skill. We do not want our autistic person to feel out of place. We all need new skills taught, and most of us need new skills taught more than once. Help the autistic person find a friend. One person who has similar interests, who enjoys what that individual enjoys, and set that up. Someone for the individual to sit with at lunch or during breaks or to walk around with. That will increase the enjoyment of the work environment and, of course, will increase positive mental health. At the same time, don't expect our individual to be a social butterfly. Many of us are not, and that is absolutely okay. So, respect their autism, respect that they may want one person as a friend or two or three, and do not try to make the person something that he or she is not. The autistic person does not need to be changed. The autistic person is fine the way he is. The autistic person, just like you and I, need to learn new skills to do better in our environments. And so, if you are a mentor to an autistic person, I hope that these will serve as guidelines. Now, I want to give you a case study here of a young man by the name of Eduardo. And Eduardo worked at an accounting firm, and he was very respected. He was a hard worker. He also was a Facebook user, like many people. He liked his social media and often posted things, including some work related issues. And Eduardo was known for his comments being kind of funny and, and not being hurtful in any way. And people at work were his friends on Facebook. Well, Eduardo had a situation where he felt like the line manager had done him wrong. And he felt like he was redirected in an unkind way for making a mistake on a tax return. And the mistake was minor. It wouldn't have resulted in the client getting in trouble. But Eduardo felt like he was being redirected in a way that wasn't kind. And so he posted on Facebook that his manager was unkind, named his manager, and then also named the name of the client. Okay, what happened to Eduardo? Well, as you know, Eduardo lost his job. Eduardo did not have information that he needed that would have helped him be successful. For example, he needed to be directly taught, do not post any work-related comments or information on social media. Now, the exception is if your supervisor asks you. And just because someone else does it does not mean that you can do it at all. On your Facebook page, on your LinkedIn page, you can list your place of employment, but you do not want to go beyond that. Also, think about keeping personal opinions to yourself, and because you are, or think about what you want to post, because you are going to be judged according to the opinions that you present. And you do not want your work impacted by this or your fellow employees. Also, you can actually have libel if you post something on social media that is negative about someone. And you could be, there could be financial damages. Also, be aware of what your friends are posting, because your friends are associated with you. I know a young man with autism who was training to be a teacher, and he got a placement in a school for his student teaching. Now, some of his friends were engaging in some illegal behavior, and they wrote about the illegal behavior, and it appeared on this young man's Facebook page, even though he was not involved, and he lost his student teaching assignment and could not student teach for another year. So be aware of what people who are associated with you are posting and whether or not you want to share that information. Cursing and antisocial behavior is always a no. Nothing about social media is private. Also, we do know that when people apply for jobs, their social media sites are generally checked to see if they're going to be offered a job, or even if the employee is being offered a new position before that position is offered. So make sure that your conduct on social media reflects a person that you want to be on the job. And as such, you want to consider whether or not you want to join groups or subscribe to pages that contain information that may be viewed controversial by those you work with or those who employ you. And earlier, as I said, browsing social media during work time, it can be a dismissible offense because you are being paid to work. You are not being paid to browse social media. So this could even be called a theft of time. Another issue that we have to understand in the workplace is dress. And so most businesses have a dress code that needs to be followed, whether you like it or not. And piercings and body art are accepted in some businesses. In other businesses, they are not. If you have these, they may need to be covered unless they're a part of the corporate culture. Now, also personal hygiene. No matter how good of an employee you are, no matter how smart you are, how well you do, if your personal hygiene is bad, you will not maintain your job. And while you have your job, chances are you're not going to have a lot of positive social interactions. So no body odor, check your breath, hair comb, and know what the culture is for shaving face for men. Also, you may think your hygiene is fine, but you are not the judge of your hygiene. Other people are. So ask others. There's another issue important on the job that we often do not address until problems occur, and that is the role of sexuality or sexual harassment, excuse me. Here is a clip from The Big Bang Theory, and you're going to see where Sheldon, who has a grad student, is becoming concerned because his grad student is interested in Sheldon's roommate, Leonard. And Sheldon thinks that the grad student should only be interested in him, Sheldon. So he provides some direction to help her be more focused on work and not focused on Leonard. Okay, sexual harassment is against the law. And autistic people, all people need to understand what sexual harassment is. Generally, people like to pay compliments, and so we have to make sure that we're using general compliments such as "you look nice today." Compliments about specific body parts are not appropriate. Also, discussing personal sexual life at work is a no-no. Even if someone else is doing these things, it is not appropriate for autistic people or any people to do them. But even if you see them, they are not acceptable. The next thing, we need to make sure that autistic people need a way to manage their stress throughout the day. And quite often, it's difficult for outsiders, people who don't understand anxiety, to realize that a regulation plan can be extremely helpful. Here is a regulation plan for a young woman by the name of Lilia. Lilia is a tax accountant, and her management plan looks at management at stress when her stress is high, medium, and low. And her plan identifies the stress level, what her plan is, and then there's a third column that says personal reminder, where it's something that she needs to remind herself. Maybe it's reminding herself to do something or to say something. So for example, when her stress is high, it looks like her teeth are being clenched, her eyes are watering, she can't understand the meaning of written words. The regulation plan is to close and lock the door of her office, to turn off the ringer of her phone, to lie on her yoga mat, listen to music on her phone, and the music will be nature related. Her personal reminders, well, she will try to inhibit blurting out no, and she's going to remind herself to take a deep breath. And if she has to say something, she's going to say, let me get back to you later. If her stress is at medium, she'll notice herself drumming on her keyboard, maybe rubbing her eyes, and there's a bit of a lag of understanding between reading what she's reading and comprehending it. If that happens, she turns on a white noise maker in her office. She turns off the fluorescent light and puts on a lamp, and she takes a short walk to kind of compose herself. Her personal reminder, she's going to remind herself to smile and act friendly. And if someone says something to her, to nod and say, okay, I'll add that to my list, or can I get back to you later? If her stress is low, it looks like rubbing fabric between her fingers and taking off her glasses. And she has lag time between understanding what someone says. And her regulation plan is to close her door, chew gum, and drink coffee or another beverage, which she finds calm. Her personal reminder is she's going to set the visual timer to do a 30-minute stress check. And she's got a script to say, I see, or thank you, or make some generic comment if someone talks to her. And if her stress level is at none, she enjoys her stress-free status and follows her CAPS, her daily schedule. Now, this is a regulation plan that she has available to her throughout the day that her supervisor and mentor has. And the supervisor or mentor can see what the stress level is and aid her to implement the regulation plan. Now, in closing, I'd like to share with you one more document. It's called the CAPS, the Comprehensive Autism Planning System. Now, the CAPS is designed to help the individual have a more predictable day. And you'll notice that the CAPS has categories across the top and down the left-hand side parts of the day. So let's look at down the left-hand side. We have entry to work, leaving work, and those are in the same category because the same supports are needed by Lilia. Another thing that she does is she takes breaks. She has her work tasks that she does. She has meetings either with her fellow employees or with other clients, and she has lunch. Those are her activities. Then across the top are the supports she may need, and they're in categories. Okay, I just went over the time and activity, but the next is skills that she needs to learn. And so for each task, there are skills she needs to learn. I'll go over that in a minute. Then what kind of structure or modifications does she need? What kind of reinforcement does she need so that she knows she's doing a good job? Does she need sensory supports? What kind of communication and social skill supports does she need? What kind of data will be collected to see if she's meeting her goals? And what generalization plan is needed? Now, all that generalization plan means is what of these strategies can she use elsewhere? So here is Lilia's caps. The time and activity is either entering work or leaving work. The skill she's going to learn is small talk. So before she talks to people as she enters work or leaves, she's going to look at Yahoo News for conversation topics. The reinforcement is friendship. Sensory strategies, she doesn't need any. For communication or social skills is she wants to remind herself to say something about the Yahoo News. For data collection, her goal is to make 2 comments on the way to work or entering work and 2 comments leaving work. And she's going to use this plan at the gym. So when she enters, here's what she's working on. During her breaks, she doesn't have skills to learn during her breaks and she doesn't need any structure. She's doing breaks so she can be more productive. And for her sensory strategies, remember the regulation plan that I went over? She's going to look at her regulation plan, see where she is, and during her breaks, implement the intervention so she can be calm. And if she's on break and someone wants to talk to her, she's just going to nicely tell them that she'll get back to them later because this is her break time or de-stressing time. Data collection, she's going to self-check her stress and she's going to use her stress plan at home. For her work task, the skill that she needs to work on is she's a tax accountant, so she has to stay current on the tax code that changes a lot. And Lilia gets dizzy when she scrolls, so she needs hard copy of the tax code. Reinforcement, well, she's just more productive when she has it. Her sensory strategy, she's going to keep referring to a regulation plan. She doesn't need any communication or social supports during her work. And the data collection is the same as anybody else, and that's her billable hours. For meetings, the skills that she is working on are small talk and being smooth in her interactions. The structure she's going to have in place is there's going to be an agenda for all the meetings that she is in, so she knows what's happening. For reinforcement, after the meeting's over, she's going to ask the administrative assistant for feedback, so she knows how she did. For sensory, she's got her regulation plan that I've shown you. And then she's also going to have tea or coffee because social is very stressful. And before the meetings, Lilia, like most of us, has an address book. And so for each one of her address cards, she has put notes on about her clients and fellow employees. So if she met with, Mr. Johnson, a client, she maybe made a note saying, dog, German Shepherd named Fluffy. So that when she sees Mr. Johnson next time, she looks at the card before she meets and she'll say, hey, how's Fluffy going? He's a beautiful German Shepherd. Data collection is again feedback from the administrative assistant. And finally, lunch. Again, small talk she's working on. She's going to review Yahoo News, and she's also going to remember some personal details about the people she works with. The reinforcement is she's going to develop friends. Sensory, she has her regulation plan. And if she happens to be stressed during lunch, she can tell people that she wants to talk later, to say it's de-stressing time, or if she goes to her office, she can say, I've got some work to catch up on. The data collection is going to be just reflecting, hey, how did lunch go? And generalization, she's going to use these same strategies when she meets with her clients. Now, those are some simple strategies that you can use to help our individuals with autism understand the unwritten rules or the hidden curriculum of employment.